Hello, my gorgeous friends. Welcome to the fifth video, I guess. Yeah, I'm not really taking note of that, but I believe this should be the fifth video. So, in the last section, we actually added our endpoints and also the clients and set up everything. So, and I also forgot to push to GitHub, but I've already done that already. Okay, so sorry I cheated a little bit. I didn't show you guys, but it's just a normal git add, git commit, and git push. So I pushed to GitHub, so it's on GitHub already. So you can see now this stuff is not showing those line and all those warnings, and the reason was because I had to go back to my analysis options again and just uncomment this stuff. So I don't care if it's showing errors. I don't care because it really giving me some headache. So I just had to remove it. But if you know your way around this lint and all this stuff, you can actually work with it. Yeah, you're good to go. Okay, so I will go back now. And also one more thing again I did in your absence was this init hive store. So I had to get the correct statement. So it was await init hive for Flutter. Okay, so I got it from this their readme file. So it was here. So we are using hive store for persistence. That's what GraphQL uses under the hood. So that's why we needed to add to initialize the hive store to avoid any errors along the way. Okay, so make sure you do that. Okay, and currently this project is not running. As you can see, it's not running because we for now we don't really need to work with UI. Okay, the main focus is just to get our provider functions and also get the query, the schemas, the data we want to get, and then once we add them, I'm going to show you how to connect it to the UI. Okay, so without much ado, let's run right quick into this. So I'm going to go to the provider. The first thing I'm going to do now is, because now we want to add a new tax. Okay, so I'll add tax provider dot that. Okay, so the first thing I want to do, remember I said we are going to be using provider for all of this because it helps us to manage our states. Okay, so I'm going to create a class and we'll call this add tax provider extend change notifier. Okay, it's going to import these foundations for us. Okay, so in this case now we are going to be needing two variables. You know, provider actually enables us to create setters and getters within the class. So I'm going to create two variables. The first variable is going to be the status, so that we'll be able to listen to the current status of the upload. So if it is still uploading, yeah, the status is going to return true. If it's not, it's going to return false. And then I'm going to also create a string that is going to return, if it's an error, it's going to return it to that string. Whatever it is going to return it to that string. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is to create a setter, and it's going to be a boolean value. So I'm going to make it private to this class, and initially I want it to be false. So now we have setting that okay, this stuff is not loading. Then secondly, I will get a string of response and I will set it to an empty string, and then I'm going to create a getter for the status. So it's going to be get status. Okay, and then we set it, we assign the value to the status. Okay, so that's what we are going to be listening to. And then secondly, I'm going to create the one for get response. Okay, so I'll call this one response like so. Okay, then one more thing is just to create a void, because now we are not going to return anything. It's not like REST API where you can return few. No, sorry, it's not like a project that you're not using state management that you can just use future and then return the stuff you want to return. No, provider is not like that. So just use your void because you're not going to return anything. And then I can add this one, add task. So the task, right now I don't really know the values that it's going to take, but I just need to put a sync. So this is where we're going to stop for here. Okay, then the next thing, I'm going to create a schema. The schema basically is just going to define the type of data we want to, like how our GraphQL variables are going to look like, the data we are going to add, and the data we want to get once the response we want to get once the data has been added. Okay, and this is going to be a short one, so I'm just going to create a schema, add tag schema. now we are going to head over to the Graphql Playground, the API that was shared with me, and this is it. So to see the docs, maybe you don't know how to use it, go to the docs, and you can see we have query, mutation, and another one again that Graphql has is subscription. So subscription just acts like a WebSocket. It helps us to listen to an event continuously. Okay, the mutation just acts like your patch, put, and post request. Mutation, you can use it to mutate, that's what it means, to change something. So it can be used to create, like, yeah, add, delete, and make any changes to the database. So query basically is more like to get data from the database. So it's more like you making a get request. Okay, but for this, I said I was going to start with create to do, because there need to be a data inside the database before we can fetch it. Okay, so I'm just going to create the data that will be needed. Since this is mutation, I will always start with mutation. Okay, and then you put your bracket. Yeah, so now we are going to call, sometimes this mutation can be plenty. If it's delete, we can call delete to do, but since this stuff is create to do, which is what we want, I'm going to call create to do. And we need to know the arguments that I need to pass. So if you hover on this, now you can see arguments inputs, and it has already given us this input, so I'm just going to put it there like so. And now I don't really know the new to do that I'm going to add, so I'll click on it, and you can see it has task and a status. So this status, from what he said this status is not really necessary, but we are also going to include it. So whatever you see this exclamation mark that looks like no safety, just know that it is required. Okay, but anyone that does not have that, like this one that does not have that no safety sign, that exclamation mark, that means it's not required. So this one now we know that is required, so we need to pass it in. So what I'll do here is just to define the task. So for now the task is a string, remember. Okay, I'm just going to put it there for now, and then the status is also a string. Okay, and then what do we want to return? Let's see the data that he's returning. So if you go to this type details, now you're going to see that he's returning the ID of the to-do, the task, the status, and the time added whenever we create a new to-do. So I can just request for the ID alone, because I don't need the task. There's nothing I can do with this task, so I'll just request for only ID alone. That's what he's going to return. Okay, so we can close that up. And one thing I normally do, I take this mutation like a function. Okay, so what I'll do, since this task is a string that is required, this status also is a string that is required. So what I'll do, I'll just create task. Yeah, so the task is a string. You can see it's actually giving us hints, which is required. And then secondly, I use my $sign again for status, which is also a string as well that is required. So inside this task now, instead of passing this, I'm going to pass this variable that I just created here. So in this case, it's going to be task. Okay, and also in this case, it's going to be status. Okay, I'm not going to add this stuff to my code now, which it will be later, or I can add it real quick. But for now, we need to test this stuff to be sure that it's working. So you can see now, this is my mutation. It has two arguments, task and status. So let me try to see if it's going to add any items to the query. So I'll go to the query variable. If you are testing and you want to add headers, this is where you add your headers. Okay, and you can add your authorization and blah 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 with your barrier token. But since we want to test this stuff now, I'll type in the task, my first to do. Okay, my first task, and then the status. So it's going to be available. Okay, let's say pending. Okay, like so. And once you are done, click on this play button, and you can see now the to do. This means the to do have been added because we only request for the ID. You can see we only request for the ID. But if I request for the status and also the task, once we add, it's going to return the status, which is pending, and the task. So let me change this stuff to active. Okay, for the test, and you see it's going to return active. So now we have added 3 data to the database, right? Okay, so let me add the schema, which is what we'll be using, and this is the structure of how everything is going to look like. So now, since it's working here, we're very certain that it's going to work in our code. So I'm just going to copy that and go to my schema here. I will create a class and call it add tag schema. Okay, like so. and I can create a static string, add tags string. I call it add tags JSON, and you're going to use 3. Okay, it's going to be like this. So make sure there are 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so add it in the middle like this. Okay, yeah, so don't make mistake on that, and then you can paste your schema here. And you can see initially we added this stuff worked in the Graphql Playground. So in this case, we're going to add this backslash to it to escape the $sign. Sorry, yeah, on all of them. So depending on the data you're adding, it can be so many. All right. So this is it, and this is our schema, and these are the mutation. This is the parameter that the API requires that we send and fetch it. Okay, so I think this is where we're going to stop. But before I stop, let's first of all push this to GitHub. Okay guys, thank you for watching. In the next section, I'm going to show you how to add this stuff and then add our first tags to the database.